Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, where we explore the business, psychology, and lifestyle of modern matchmaking. I'm your host, Arlene Washburn, and today we're joined by a truly innovative guest, Andreas, also known as the Match Creator. He's the CEO of Circology, a dating coach, and the creator of the Circus Question, a revolutionary compatibility tool that's changing how we approach relationships. Welcome to the show, Andreas.
Thank you for having me, Arlene. It's a pleasure to be here.
Super excited to have this conversation with you. And Andreas, your journey is quite unique, from a successful career in architecture to becoming a dating coach and an app creator. Can you share how your background influenced your approach to relationships and led you into creating Circology?
Yeah, well, it's a personal journey, obviously. From my point of view, it was my love journey that brought me here. I'm in this space because I was looking for love. And I found it frustrating after 13 years in a relationship that ended in my late 40s, that I started engaging with dating sites. And that was alien to me. I was an international DJ. I used to have no problem with ladies, and certainly no problem in real life. My problem was, all of a sudden, I'm late 40s. I can't really go to the clubs. I can't really go to the bars and try to pick up lines and look stupid. Obviously, my social circle became younger. I was hanging around with 30-somethings, friends and associates. But I found the internet amazing. This tool was like, oh my God, it's a candy box. You know, I'm going to have every chocolate I want. The problem was, I wanted to find compatibility. I wanted the next relationship to be the one. That's a tall order, isn't it? But I thought, look, I've had 13 years relationship, which has ended. I've got no kids and I've got no relationship. Do I want to have fun or do I want to miss out? And the answer was no. I want to try and take it seriously. So I decided to form a strategy to navigate the dating sites and understand how people's profiles projected their real character and their photograph. Obviously, you can like someone, which I was swiping left, right, obviously, because I fancied someone and they didn't, which was quite normal. But then when I was getting like 30 likes or 30 messages, or I was getting feedback from 30 different women that I could date, obviously I couldn't date 30 at one time. So I then started engaging in conversation and found it frustrating because who I thought I liked, I didn't like. Who I thought I wasn't so sure about, I liked more. And that whole process of weeks and weeks of backwards and forwards texting, because at that point, it was very rare for people just to meet up, very quickly. It was very guarded. People were very much stay safe, get to know the person, and then maybe after a few weeks or a month, maybe you'll meet them in real life. And that was quite frustrating. And certainly we didn't use video so much. When I first started, cameras on smartphones wasn't that popular. WhatsApp certainly wasn't that popular. So anyway, there I was looking at a system or a framework that could help me. So as a designer, architect, I decided to design it. And that sounds really crazy, but I thought there's got to be a question I can ask someone. And I'd looked at Myers-Briggs and I'd looked at personality testing, and I was on OkCupid and I answered the 100 questions, and I was matching at 90% and 70%, and that was quite good. But then the people that hadn't answered 100 questions, I might have liked them, but I didn't know if I was compatible. So I thought, well, there's got to be one question you can ask someone. So I devised the Circus Question. And I thought, if you identify with somebody's role, if you identify with your role and you can then identify with their role, there's got to be some kind of match going on. And I don't want to spoil it, so maybe I should cut to the question with you, because I think your listeners and viewers would also like to know what the question is, actually. But the question worked. That was the point. It worked both positively and negatively. I was able to filter people. And I'll explain the process that happened after that. And that's how I got into coaching, by actually telling people they weren't compatible and then helping them on their journey. Because I was like, well, okay, this is what you need and you're not getting it from me. And they were like, oh, okay. So what do I need? Exactly what do I need? And I say, well, okay, you need this. And all of a sudden I was advising, and my inbox was backwards and forwards with loads of rejections that I was rejecting. I was helping them. And then it became a case of meeting people just to help them. So I'd inbox them, look, I can help you on your journey. And I had all these dating sites. I was like a bit of a dating guru undercover. I've been banned from all of them, by the way. I can guarantee I've been banned. This went on for 3 years, but I got banned because the odd person used to take exception to this guy saying he's a dating coach and duping them and like, oh my God, I thought you were dating. I thought you were this nice guy I was going to talk to and maybe go on a date with. I say, no, actually, I'm not here. You know, I was taken at the end, but I'm here actually just helping people because we're not compatible. You've answered my question and we're not, and some took exception, obviously.
Was the question over email or were you having conversations when you would ask the question?
Originally, it was all inbox conversation. So it was you liked, they liked, start conversation. Hey, I was opening with the question. So it was, hey, I don't know, Arlene, how are you? I'm Andrea. I'm really curious to know this question. Your answer to this question. So it was very friendly, very easygoing. And the question was, Arlene.
Mm-hmm. Before we go there, because I want to just tee this up. So, and I love everything you shared. And by the way, it's not unusual that the majority of the people that I've interviewed who have gone into either dating coaching or matchmaking are going into it for personal reasons, because I have a very similar story to yours where I found myself after almost 17 years in a marriage, and the father, he's now, unfortunately, he passed away at a very early age, but I found myself single in my 40s, and you know, I had dated and stuff like that, but I got very curious about what you needed to have as compatibility in order to have a successful relationship, because I hung in there in that relationship, but it was not ideal. And so it made me very curious, and I started learning and taking courses and reading books and everything else. So it's so fascinating how so many people do that, right? And then I ended up going to a matchmaker and going through that process and thinking, oh my God, this is a joke. Like I could do this so much better. But it sort of stuck in the back of my head. And at that time, I was in the pharmaceutical industry. So you know, I was like, oh my God, I'm a senior executive in the pharmaceutical industry. How am I ever going to be a matchmaker, right? But I was still kind of brewing. And I had the same experience, but I ended up meeting my husband online. He was like, that was like maybe the third time I used the online app after getting in and out of relationships. And he was the third guy that I met. But you're right, because the thing about online is that they don't have they're not asking the right questions in order to garner if people are compatible, because let's face it, they really want people to stay on the app so they can make money, you know?
Well, this is it. This is it. Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. But I want to ask you this before we get into the questions and the nitty gritty of your system, which, by the way, for everyone who's listening, I've gone through it and it was very on target. So I can vouch for that. But it's why circus? Why not something more serious? Like the circus is such a whimsical, unexpected lens for something as serious as relationship compatibility. So why choose a circus as the metaphor, if you will, and not say like archetypes like warriors or sages or even love language or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what made you go in that direction?
Okay. The main reason was I looked at the space. The tent is a metaphor for the world and the various relationships that we all have. We're all unique. Now, there are just on the generic level, there are over 50 acts and performers, sideshows. I include circus activist, audience, popcorn seller, ticket seller. They're all roles and acts within the circus, and sideshows, and production staff, musicians, whatever. So I get all these roles come back to me. Sometimes maybe people are smart and they say, I'm a snake charmer. He's not going to know what that's about. And of course, there is an answer to that one. You know, seal with the red nose. I've had that before. Why specifically the red nose? Because I'm unique. Well, of course you are. But anyway, going back to the circus, it was the space that your imagination could wander. And because I buy into the psychology, Jung, Freud, childhood, those memories, those associations are very important to our being, our personality. And I think the circus embodies the fun, the whimsical, the childlike, the imagination that I think very few people will not know the answer to the question. And those that don't have missed out on the circus. But if you ask something serious, you're limited. You know, Myers-Briggs is great. You know, it's a great system. I've tried it. I used it. In fact, I used it when I went dating initially. And I thought, great, I'm XXXX. I'm not going to share the whatever, but I can't remember now. But how does that relate to someone else? Who do I match with? Because most people haven't got ENJP in their profile. And if it did match mine, are we likes or are we dislikes? Are we conflict or how do we relate? And when I ask the question, when I explain it a bit further, and you know already anyway, there are lots of relationships in the circus. And that's what I'm buying into. That's the analogy. I want the relationships. There's not one character that stands alone. All of them relate to somebody. And that primary person they relate to is the ideal partner.
I think it's great. And after you had explained it to me, you know, some might think like the Circus Question and, you know, they'll hear it and assume it's like a fun icebreaker. But from what I saw, it's so deep, you know. So let's talk about the question. Let's share.
Interesting. And I'm going to go with you. I'm going to agree with you there. When I started, I did it as a bit of fun with a bit of seriousness attached. Mm-hmm. And it's evolved to quite serious. As you said, I've looked at the depth and I've tried to understand how it works. Because originally, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to pretend I read loads of psychology books because I don't. I come from a creative background, architecture, and I think laterally. Everything is grey with me. You don't design a space and it's finished. There's always room for more design. And any creative or designer will tell you they can tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak until they have to I would procrastinate on designing. And if I'm submitting at 12 o'clock midnight, at 11:59, I will decide on that design. That's how it would be. That's always, most creatives do that. So there's always room for change. There's always room for evolving. And that's the beauty of this whole Circology system or framework, because it is evolving. In the app, instead of the book, I'm able to tweak it as we go along. And because I get my feedback and I think, hang on a minute, maybe they've got a point. So when we get to that point, you'll see. So that's why I decided on the app and not the book, because people that I've coached for over 15 years now, a lot of them have become friends. And they'll say to me, when's the book coming? When's the book coming? I think, do you know what? I'm not ready for the book because there's so many things to do here. And that's not excuses. In October last year, I had the epiphany, Circology. And a framework, which I will describe to you, all of a sudden fell into place. And that has evolved into something quite serious, and understanding the neuro-linguistic side of the question and the embedded command, and talking to psychologists, working with psychologists who have actually, I thought they would poo-poo it. They've actually been wowed by it. They're like, how did you come up with this? I'm like, well, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I had a formula because I would bottle it, but it works. Anyway, shall we ask the question so
Yeah.
we can let the genie out the bottle, and then we can discuss?
Yeah, and just a quick thing that I wanted to say, when I think about an architect, I think about someone who has frameworks, and it's interesting how you describe yourself as an artist more so than, because an architect has to make sure things fit the right way and that they make
Yeah.
sense. And so there's usually some sort of framework in there. But
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
like the dichotomy of having both the artistic side and then the framework, because I think that's really what you've developed here.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, my degree was Bachelor of Arts, not Bachelor of Science in architecture. In the UK, I don't know if it's the same in America, I'm assuming it is. You have two different schools, one that's heavily biased on art and one's heavily biased on science. And the bias for arts tends to be more creative, projects that sometimes can't be built because they can't stand up, but it's wow and it's amazing. Zaha Hadid, the architect, I don't know if you're familiar with her, some crazy sculptural designs that win plaudits. And then there's the technical science-backed architectural degree, which is more facts and figures and numbers and statistics and linear and the Norman Foster type style architecture, which for me, I'm glad I did the art, because I was allowed to think out of the box a little bit more. So we had to know how frameworks worked, but we had to appreciate the creative side more.
Yeah.
So let's explain that.
No, I love it. And hence Circology, because it's very different. Nobody else is using this framework or this idea or, but let's let the cat out of the bag, as you said. Let's
Yeah.
on the question.
This is the problem. It's so simple that once it's out the bag, it's when I'm promoting the brand, I kind of have to hold back and it's a bit like the magician can't show the trick.
Okay.
Can't do the
Don't show
punchline.
the
So,
trick, because I do have some more questions for you.
okay, let's go.
Who is this app really for? Is it more geared towards individuals exploring their own relationship patterns, or is it primarily a tool for professionals like matchmakers and coaches? Is it for couples? Who is it for?
Okay, it's for everyone. And this is it's evolved. I mean, that's the reality. I started coaching people one-on-one. Then the odd time I would get a woman come to me and she'd say, look, I appreciate you coach singles, but look, I've got a problem with my husband. Can you help me? And I'm like, well, what are you doing on a dating site? And they go, well, we're kind of separated, but I really want to make it work. So I coached both of them. And I asked them both the question at the same time. And they both gave me an answer. And I was able to actually do what some of my fellow coaches who are therapists using the framework do now, where they use the one question directed at both, see their answers, and are able to actually navigate the conflict by actually explaining to them in the analogy, which is quite clear, why you are conflicting between the pair of you and how you can compromise to make it work if you want to make it work. When I used to date, my dating journey was very much, I fancy this girl, forget the dating sites, I fancy this girl, I'm going to make her mine. And that's kind of how we all learn to date. The dream, oh, she likes me and I like her, we're going to get married and have kids. And the bubble burst because somewhere along the line, it was clear we weren't compatible. And so Circology, the framework, and the Circus Question, as it's evolved, I've understood that really what I'm building here is the foundation for a relationship. So the first question is, it helps you clarify who you are in your role.
So how have you had different reactions from like a Gen Z or Gen X, or like, does it make a difference where the age group or the specific market that you're talking to? I mean, as a coach?
No, I've mainly coached over 30s. Okay. So where I have asked people, in their, like you said, basically in their 18s and up, and I've asked a few, friends have asked their 13, 14, 16-year-olds. And it's interesting the choices they've made. it's obvious that they're evolving. They're kind of, you can tell by the choice that they're growing. You know, once you understand the dynamics, it is all about power dynamics and feminine and masculine essence. So there is a deeper meaning to all of this that becomes obvious by someone's answer. And from my point of view, the interesting thing is the younger generation is buying more into compatibility. They're using astrology, synastry. They're using any method that's going to help them get one step ahead. Because we're all frustrated. I mean, come on. I was late 40s. I was frustrated. Like you said, you were 40s. I mean, you were very fortunate to hit jackpot on your third go. Honestly, very fortunate. What if this was like 10 years down the line, you were in your 50s and you were still having the problems?
It goes exponentially down for women in their 60s. Women, our chances of finding a successful relationship declines, whereas the man's goes up because as he gets older, he might have more assets and, you know, a different situation if he stays in shape, all that stuff. And for women, it declines. I mean, it's just don't kill the messenger, whoever's listening to this. But if you look at the stats, that's definitely what happens. And I think this younger generation is being a lot more careful about getting married. In fact, there's not that many marriages, but they're being more careful and looking for these answers. And I would think, and that's why I asked you the question about Gen Zs or Gen X or whatever, because they also are very prone to use apps. And so by using the Circus Question.
The Circus Question app that you mentioned, the direct-to-consumer app, which is the one that's available now. We've been beta testing since actually we launched on Valentine's Day. Frustratingly, I wanted to get it done way before Valentine's and do a whole promotion, but it didn't happen. We had a few glitches. So we launched softly on Valentine's Day because it seemed appropriate, you know, to just do it and see what happens. And we've been beta testing. The feedback's been amazing, but it's not out there in the under 25s yet. I've probably got 2 people under 25, and that's where it needs to go for me to be able to answer that truthfully as to how they're using it. I do know that people are using it in real life, in friendships, in dating, but because the apps are, you know, the dating sites are suffering a bit, people aren't using it as much on dating sites. So they believe it or not, I had someone message me and say they've been using it on speed dating. I thought it was quite funny that they've got their phone out and they're saying, and they're not meant to. And they asked the organizer, they said, look, can I use my phone because I've got this app that's helping me? And they were like, okay, why not? Fair enough. And they were quite a hot girl, actually. So they didn't want to lose her. So they said, yeah, carry on. And she's standing there asking this question, or sitting there asking this question, and guys are meeting her criteria or not.
Such a great use case because speed dating is really back in style now, which it was like very popular and then it sort of faded out. And now I keep hearing about people going on speed dating events all the time. I have a colleague who's also building an online speed dating thing. I mean, it's just become a popular thing again.
Well, people need safety. More than anything, people need safety. They need clarity that they're not being catfished. They need reality because you're meeting the person, even if you don't like anybody in the room, you're getting out for the night and you're meeting people. And the events have got better because they were really quite cheesy. I mean, we're talking 20 odd years ago, they were really quite cheesy. You know, they were balding men and quite, you know, not very pleasant. Let's call it that. Now they're more social. The kind of people that would go clubbing or to a bar now actually go speed dating because there's cocktails, there's mixers going on, there's other events going on. You know, the organizers are getting it right. And I think that's only going to grow even more. I was asked if I would do a talk at a champagne mixer function in a hotel. This was last year. And the organizer was thinking, let's do this really like a cocktail party. And I thought, oh, this is great. And they were not a matchmaker. They just wanted to do it. They were a promoter, a PR person. They just wanted to do it because there's so many singles in her circle of friends. And I thought, great idea. It didn't happen because she got busy with something else, but that's something we might visit. But certainly,
that's a great way for you to launch it in different markets, just to do events, because people are craving for something. They want to be around other people. They don't know how as much anymore. I mean, I think I'm a little bit older than you, but our generation knew how to socialize.
You might be surprised.
I don't know.
I'm not going to ask you, and you're not going to ask me, but let's put it this way.
I tell my age all the time. I'll be 59 this year.
Well, I'm older than you.
Oh, you are? No way.
I am older than you. Yeah. I'm an early 60s child. Let's put it that way.
Gosh, I had no
idea. So look, we grew up in our teenage years in the 70s, right? And you know, that I can't say enough how fun it was to go dating in the 70s.
Yeah, we used to have those parties at high school, these high school parties where there was always a DJ, and there was always a way to socialize. And I feel like this younger generation is just stuck behind a computer or an app. And if you're going to use an app like this for compatibility purpose, at least if you use it at a really cool venue, and you actually, whether it's speed dating or whatever, or just walking around asking people the question, that could be so much fun and a great way to get more users on there too.
Well, it is, but it's about getting it out there. And like I said to you, the app's just arrived, and I've pivoted slightly because of demand. People that I speak to have said to me, oh, I've got a friend who's a matchmaker. She wants to talk to you about me being a consultant and as a coach. So I started talking to her, and I explained the app to her. And she said, oh, hold on a minute. Can I use this in my business? Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, I suppose you can. And then the penny dropped. I thought, hang on a minute. If I'm going to give it to you, at the moment, it's $7.50. It's going to go up. For life. That's not a monthly subscription. Okay, that's a plug, but yeah, it's cheap. It's not a monthly. I do not believe in monthly subscriptions. Sorry. I believe if I'm going to teach you something, then you should have as much time as you want to use it and abuse it and learn from it. And you know what? If it doesn't work for you, you're not being subscribed. You're not being used. I mean, I understand the dating sites model. Ultimately, I'd like to create one for myself with the Circology framework, but I would like it to just be a one-fee situation, purely because I do believe you should help people get there and get off. Mm-hmm. And if they've learned and they come back, then so be it.
But I think when I think about your app and having gone through that with you and the question, it's not just for dating. I mean, it's just for compatibility. Relationship compatibility is like across the board, and everywhere you look in your life, your parents, your children, your colleagues, I can see how this could be very useful everywhere. And I think maybe you mentioned something about other
HR business use. Yeah, I was, I've got my young family now. So I've got 3 kids under 6. This is what happened. I actually met my wife online after the 3 years that I was coaching. She found me. We found each other. We actually used the question. I used the question on her. She was compatible with me. And we interviewed for about a month before we met in real life. We were a bit of a distance, so it was difficult to just say, let's drop everything and meet for coffee or whatever. But long story short, I was at a kids' party, one of my children's birthday parties with a child's birthday party. One of the parents was standing there, and I knew this guy. And we were talking, and he saw me looking at my phone, and he said, oh, that looks interesting. What? Yeah. I was buried in it because I was getting messages. And I said, oh, I've developed this app. It's a dating. Obviously, this man's married with 2 kids. And I'm thinking, well, I don't I can explain it to you. So I said, look, I've developed a dating compatibility app, and this is what it does. And I thought, you know what, I might as well share it, because he was really keen. So I showed it to him, because I do that sometimes just to see a reaction and see if it works. Yeah. And he looked at it and he answered the question. I got him to read the video. There's a video in the app with vocal, no images, just vocal with the words, And he read it and he went,
on target.
He chose an answer. And I didn't bother letting him see the app. I said, you're this, 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 and this is your negatives, this is your positives, this is your love language, this is your attachment style, and this is what I believe you need. And I said, I think you've already got it, but do you want to ask her the question? And he called his wife over, and that happened, and it was all dead on point. Anyway, he said to me, I'm head of HR for a big company, a government company, and I'm a head of 5,000 personnel. We use compatibility apps all the time. Do you think we could use yours?
Amazing.
I was like, yeah, maybe. He said, look, I understand the love language here. Yeah, meeting your significant other. But surely what you've just described to me about power dynamics and equality and balance and, roles, etc. That's all that is to me is team building and compatibility within a framework of business. And I was sold. I was like, okay. He said, do you mind if we can test this out? So I've been developing it with him, and I'm tweaking things. So I've now developed the Circus Question Pro app, and Pro is for matchmakers, a different version. Pro for coaches, relationship, life coaches, etc., therapists, one type of app. So it's slightly tweaked. And then you've got the HR, the business app.
And if a matchmaker were to use this app for her clients, is it something that she will ask the question, maybe in her questionnaire or something, and do the background stuff on the app? Or is it something that she just shares with her clients and has them download it or something? How does that work?
Right. Okay. I figured it out with this one of the matchmakers I've been working with. We figured out, because I didn't really know that much about matchmaking. Obviously, believe it or not, my family comes from a matchmaking background. Being Greek and in the village, everyone's a matchmaker.
Yeah.
So, I've grown up with this introduction, even myself, my parents and family would, we've got this lovely girl for you. Come and meet her. We know all about her. So compatibility and matchmaking is in my blood. But she said to me, look, we have a client or a number of clients, and then we have a roster or 100 or 200 or whatever. Well, I call it Rolodex, but your CRM of people that you pull in, right? So you've got your client and they pay me a fee and I find them from this pool of people. I mean, okay, so how do you figure out if they give you their wants and needs? How do you figure out who's compatible with them? And she goes, well, I get them to answer all these questions, and, whether it's Myers-Briggs or the Big Five or DISC or whatever system they might use. She said, I use my gut, but I also think to myself, I'm going to see if I can kind of fit them. And sometimes I get it wrong and sometimes I get it right. And most of the time I'm frustrated. I said, okay, so you've got 100 guys here and you've got one female client who's paying you a lot of money. Would it be ideal for you that those 100, you can pigeonhole them into sections, and that one client only needs to go to, if we call those sections 1 to 10 or 1 to 9, she should only be dipping into that zone, that number zone. And that relates to her ideal compatible partner. She said, yeah. And I said, Circology. Mm-hmm. That's the system of Circology. So once you ask your client or your pool of people, because that could be the first question on your chart. Whatever that, forget, you could ask 20, 50, 100 questions. At the end of the day, one question, first question, the Circus Question, is all you need to give you the foundation.
Right.
Okay. The obvious foundation is looks. Because if someone says, I only want blonde, blue eyes, you're not going to give them brunette. So that's your first, that's your filters. But if you've got a situation where you need to get people that are compatible, if you've got 10 blonde, blue-eyed guys and your client can date 3 in that period, in that month, weekly 1, 2, 3, 4, you need to get it on point. And the reality is this, nothing's perfect. We all know that. But if you can lean in to something that's going to give you more success and be more credible as a matchmaker, surely that's going to give you an advantage over, well, I'm not saying other matchmakers, but that will give you an advantage because you're going to be able to charge more. You're going to not get frustrated clients because chances are they would have had a good time, and they would feel comfortable in the dynamic, because we're talking about dynamics here. The Circus Question identifies dynamics, and that's the key. You don't want, when you meet someone, you clash.
Right.
You cannot tell on a first date if you're going to clash or not. Really, I've done it. You've done it. We've gone out and we've gone, oh my God, I thought this guy was really hot. He seemed so nice when he gave me his number in the bar or whatever, in real life these days. But he's being rude to the waiting staff. He's so obnoxious. He's so arrogant. He's telling me what I should have on the menu. And in fact, you know what? I've told him I want white wine, but he's ordered red because he said, leave it to me. I'm going to order red for you. That kind of person, if you're on the opposite side of the spectrum, you want to be as far away from them as possible. So if you're already sitting there in your role and that doesn't work for you, that's a dead date.
Yeah.
So there's more chance of actually getting it right by actually putting people in the right pigeonholes and helping them. So maybe I should ask the question, and maybe I should break down some of the choices, and then it will be easier for people to understand how it works. It's very easy, really.
Yeah, let's do it. I just would add, though, that I think there might be an opportunity there for a matchmaker to basically kind of resell the app to the people who are in her database, just to support them, because the people sitting in a database who maybe haven't even paid anything, they filled out a file. If you're a heart-centered matchmaker, you want these people to find love. And if you only have a handful, I don't care how, there are huge companies
Totally.
that a ton of money and they only have maybe 50 clients per year, or sometimes less, because maybe they're charging 150 or whatever. The point is that if that person in the database is sitting there waiting for a client to show up that could be potential for them, I would rather see, I always tell matchmakers when I train them that find ways to support these people in your database. Send them a newsletter, give them some tools, and maybe sending them the app to join could be a great thing for them, so that
you've made a very good point. And one of the business opportunities that I'm looking at is having an affiliation with affiliate scheme with the matchmakers, so they can sell the app on and get a cut.
Yeah.
The D2C app, the Pro app.
It's a win-win for everybody, because you can change your price just because. So even if she gets a cut, you're not going to change the price. I'm always of that.
No, absolutely. It's the same price.
Yeah.
I'm not going to weight it higher because she's a matchmaker. No, it's the same price, and she just gets a cut. So it's all promotion. The reality is this: the Pro app is a heavier version. The D2C is a lighter version. When I originally launched the direct consumer app, I was trying to teach people, and people were saying to me, listen, I really love the fact you've written this essay about power dynamics and this great piece on feminine and masculine essence and explaining it all, but I don't know if people really want to hear that lesson. And I said, you know what, you might be right. They just want the result, and the result is match me. They do want to know basics, but I'm saving the me for the matchmakers, so that when the matchmakers message their client with the profile of their role, their assessment, they're copy and pasting a lot of meat on the bone. I don't mean the whole, masculine, feminine essence thing. That's for them to learn. But the whole assessment, instead of it just saying for example, your negative trait is stubborn, and it's just leaving you hanging, it's stubborn. It has a parenthesis and it says, you're stubborn because this is what you do. So it's an assessment that will wow your client. Obviously, stubborn doesn't sound like a good word. There are positive and negative traits that we identify in the roles. And the negatives come out when you're in an unhealthy, toxic relationship. They're not, look, everyone's perfect. Every role is perfect. And as you know, it's perfect for you. Whoever answers that question, your role is unique at the time you answered the question. We evolve.
True. So I'm sure this is not something you can do once and forget about.
Well, you could, well, this is the reality. If you answered the question 10 years ago, you probably might have given a different answer, And if you answer the question 10 years from now, if you hadn't answered it today, you may give a different answer than you would have today. Or you may realize your role has changed because we evolve. But going back to the foundation with an ideal partner, I'm going to use this quick analogy. I look at life being a journey, and I look at it ideally, I want to be on that journey with my partner in my car, driving to that journey with all the hazards and the mishaps and the road trip you're going to have. That's life. Yeah. The flat tire, the whatever. But when you get to that journey, you're getting to it together because you're both in that car together. And in my case, I like to do all the driving. And I want a partner that enjoys me doing all the driving. Not because I don't want her to drive, but I feel I'm a gentleman. I want to drive. If she wants to take the wheel, maybe sometimes, but I don't want to share. I don't feel it's her. I don't feel she should be obliged to go 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. That's not me. I'm happy to do 7 hours or, with breaks, and maybe she'll pop in an hour if she fancies it, or not at all. Now, that's how I lead a relationship. That's how I feel comfortable. And I want someone that feels comfortable as the passenger. Not doing nothing, because bear in mind, she's reading the map. We've not got sat-nav. This is life. She's reading the map. She's helping me negotiate, navigate, whatever. Where I see a problem with a bad foundation is when two people are in separate cars, they think they're going to the same destination. But what happens on a road trip with two cars, with that just a map, no sat-nav? Someone's going to get lost. Someone's going to get separated. You grow apart. That's the analogy of growing apart. You've got less chance of growing apart if you're in the same car. Obviously, someone's going to say, but you argue in a car. Well, of course we do. But that's what you do in relationships. You navigate conflict. Conflict resolution is key to a good relationship. So you've got to have conflict. You've got to navigate that in order for it to be healthy. Anyone tells you otherwise, you got kids. I got 3 under 6, man. I can only tell you, don't have kids if you want to be sane. But of course, it's amazing. It's bittersweet. Anyway, so that analogy, I use that with my clients, and they go, "Oh yeah, I get that now." Because I think with my husband, we lost each other. Because how can you be in love with someone? You can't get enough of them. And then how many weeks, months, years down the line, you hate each other? How is that possible? Have you changed that much? The reality is sometimes yes, because you've lost each other. You've gone off in different directions. He goes and plays golf every weekend.
Yeah, they're not checking in. They're not communicating.
Yeah, you're looking after the kids day and night. You're frustrated because you're not getting any sleep. He's a CEO. He's off playing business day and night, and you're looking after the kids. It can be the other way around. Women are CEOs. I get just as many frustrated CEO women as men.
Yeah.
Look, the role's a role, and this system, this framework, is not gender relative. I've got gay, lesbian, any flavor, person, culture can take part in this, because ultimately it's all about dynamics. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman that leads and a man that wants to be led. It works for you. It's identifying your role.
Thank you for watching The Matchmaker Mentor. Join us next week for part 2 with Andreas, the Match Creator.
Have you ever felt called to help others find love? You might have the heart for matchmaking, but without the right training, turning that passion into a thriving business can feel impossible. Most matchmaking courses give you outdated theories and a certificate, but no real-world strategy to build a successful business. That's where Love Pro Mastermind Academy is different. Our live Done With You training goes beyond theory, helping you develop matchmaking expertise, implement sales and marketing strategies, and master the art of client success. With expert-led instruction, accountability, and a community of like-minded professionals, you'll learn how to identify your niche, attract high-quality clients, create a seamless matchmaking process, grow a sustainable, profitable business. With over a decade of experience, we don't just train matchmakers, we create leaders in the industry. Are you ready to become an LPMA certified matchmaker and build a business that changes lives? Apply today at lovepromastermind.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.